There's not a lot really that was wrong with these three episodes. For the most part, they were uniformly great. I'm going to give this a whole 9 out of 10. And I don't mean just these episodes, but in all of television history. It's really that good. So, what is Andor? For the completely new, Andor is a rebel we meet in Rogue One. I'm not going to give too much away because, of course, if you know too much, it'll kind of spoil the entire series. But essentially, he's a rebel. This is basically his backstory. He begins as a very absolute cynical operative, and it's his slow evolution to joining the rebellion. That's not a spoiler because that will be the story. So it will be about his connections that he makes with the rebellion. What is the disposition of the empire? What is the everyday life of a lot of people in this time period? Because this is a few years before the first Star Wars film in 1977. So this is a few years before the Battle of Yavin, canonically, and sometime after Revenge of the Sith. So it's in between those two time periods. And so we're seeing Sidious still in control, but you can already see that the Empire is slowly declining. And so we're looking at this weird merger of corporate power and the Empire using its direct operatives and how they basically govern the universe from the perspective of these different groups and factions. So the acting is pretty strong. I was actually surprised how much the music fit appropriately. It was a little bit overused in episode 3, which is much more action oriented. But yeah, it's really few things you can fault. The cinematography is spectacular, acting was very strong, script is mostly strong. I know some people didn't like pieces of the dialogue, but they do make sense in terms of the overall narrative. And the pacing, yes, is slow, but it does have a purpose because a lot of people were alienated from Rings of Power from being too slow, and they thought House of the Dragon was a lot better there. This is sort of in between. It does take its time. We just do have conversations going on and on for a little bit, but it's to establish the characters. So if you do like character studies, this is very, very strong work. However, if you do want a much more action-oriented, kind of childish version of Star Wars, this may not fit. This is really for a much more adult-oriented audience, probably teenager and up, probably like 16 and up. There are a few callbacks and homages, but they do keep it to a minimum. We definitely are in the Star Wars universe, but they don't emphasize the lightsabers, the Skywalker family, or even the Force. Those are really, really small in this kind of version of the universe. So it is really, really good, but it will fit a certain taste because the people behind this have done the Jason Bourne movies, so they're very familiar with the neo-noir genre. There's I think, a lot of homage to David Fincher of all people, and that'll be very noticeable. And Ridley Scott. Ridley Scott is a major influence here, so he's all over the place. If you do like Ridley Scott, David Fincher, neo-noir mystery, kind of these conspiracy thrillers of the Jason Bourne variety, you're gonna really love this. But there were a few flaws, not many. Probably one of the biggest problems was the flashbacks, which do serve a purpose to give us basically Andor in his very, very early years. They were fine, but clearly setting up a lot of things, but they're not really paid off. In the first three episodes, they don't mean much, so I'm guessing they're going to have a big twist at the end of the season. Maybe that's what's going on. They're nice, they're interesting details, but they did kind of slow things down needlessly, but presumably it'll be for a purpose. But otherwise, really not much to complain about, especially the technical side. The special effects are wonky here and there, but for the most part, they're very rock solid. You'll definitely notice it's fake, but they took their time. And it is a very distinct look from the other Star Wars films and even TV shows because they go nutsoid with green screen. Even though I think people went overboard in hating Boba Fett and Kenobi, I like the stories just fine, but you definitely will notice in certain places it looks very fuzzy or iffy what they did with the green screen and sort of integrating the actors with the green screen. That's not a problem here. Everything is very well integrated. It feels like a real organic universe. And some people have already faulted it for going too far because we see actual guns instead of laser blasters, but I thought that was okay. That made sense. This is a rebellion from the ground up, so they're going to use everything available to them. The most low-tech tools are what they're going to use. So overall, really, really good. I would agree that Diego Luna is, I think, a little inactive. Probably Stellan Skarsgård did a lot to really pump up the charisma factor, but I think that's intentional. He is not telling us the entire story of who he really is. There's a lot of deception, a lot of lies within lies, conspiracies within conspiracies. No one can really trust one another. So there are alliances and friendships, but there's always a lot of qualifications with who you can trust. So that's really interesting. It's a very paranoid atmosphere. So far so good. It is very excellent, but it is for a certain kind of audience. And I think if you want the more fairy tale oriented side of Star Wars, this will not work for you. This is definitely meant for the more adult audience who wants to go deeper into the mythology and looking at it from a kind of POV of the people on the ground, not the sort of high politics of Sidious and the Skywalker family. If you've gotten tired of the lightsabers and the Force, then this is for you. If you want to go back to the more childish fairy tale aspects, which is, again, it is deep within its own boundaries, like the prequels, but again, even the prequels had to rush a lot of things to not here. They really are very patient at building everything up, and there are payoffs. A lot of people were disappointed there are not more payoffs, but I guess they're going to be coming very soon. I'm giving this a very, very strong recommendation. So even if you're not a Star Wars fan, you will appreciate this from a conspiracy thriller angle. So if you do like adult-oriented drama, this is for you.